Well, thanks everyone for coming in to the new Affordable Cares Act webinar that we're having today. We're going to start this in a minute here, or next 30 seconds. We will have Teresa Badinsky, who will be doing the talk today, and answering questions that we've had so far on the ACA reporting requirements. And these are answers and questions that we've had with customers so far up to this point, and they're pretty informative across the board. She has some good some good stats and good information for you along the way here. All right, with that being said, for those that don't know us, we are Informed Decisions. We've been in the electronic document management world for over 20 years, and Teresa's going to be doing the talk today. So Teresa, take it away.
All right, perfect. We are going to try and educate you on the new Affordable Care Act reporting requirements, try and help answer some of your questions, and give you some information regarding the different forms that are available. So let's start here on the mandates. We're going to go over the individual mandate, the employee versus the employer mandate. The individual mandate is that each individual must have minimum essential health care coverage. So you'll see MEC throughout the slides, meaning minimum essential coverage. Individuals can obtain coverage from their provider. They can, from providers, the marketplace or exchange. The marketplace is run by the state or federal government. You've probably heard of that, the exchange out there where they can go out and buy a health plan. Or they're going to be obtaining coverage from an insurer, directly or sponsored by their employer, or they could be self-insured employers. The employer mandate, that is employers with at least 50 full-time employees, including full-time equivalents. So you have to count those full-time equivalents. If you'd have 2 part-time employees or half, then you will have to equate those to 1 full-time employee. But you must offer affordable minimum essential health care coverage for those employees. Please chat questions if you have those as well. But we'll go on with some definitions to kind of explain what you'll see through the slides. The full-time employee is an individual who is employed an average of at least 30 hours per week for a calendar month or 130 service hours in a calendar month. The full-time equivalent employee, and that is a combination of individuals, each of whom by themselves is not treated as a full-time employee because they are not employed an average of at least 30 hours a week, but who combined do equate to 1 full-time employee. So there's an example there. I won't go over all of the examples. You can kind of go through these slides as well at a later date, and I believe Orlando said he'll be posting this so that you can get back to it at a later date and review it. So moving on to slide 4, we're going to talk about the definitions for the employer. The applicable large employer, you'll see ALE listed throughout. That's an employer that employed an average of at least 50 full-time employees on business days during the preceding calendar year. So that is how we will refer to applicable large employer. The aggregated ALE group is 2 or more companies that have a common owner or are otherwise related. This would include companies that do not employ enough employees to meet the threshold, but when combined as a result, having a common owner would qualify as an applicable large employer. Moving on to the self-insured or self-funded, an employer that has the liability for all claims incurred and pays for each claim. The employer controls what is or is not covered and often customizes that plan. So when you hear self-insured or self-funded, which is not the most common, but if you do have pay your own claims or process your own claims, that's done by the employer or through the use of a third-party administrator, then you would be self-insured. So just think of self-insured as the provider. Moving on to insurer, a company that processes and pays the claims. This could be the company to whom the employer pays a fixed premium to transfer the claims liability. The marketplace and exchange, we talked a little bit about that. The marketplace is run by the state or federal government, and that is also another insurer, another place to purchase the health plan. Now, moving on to the ACA forms themselves. There are going to be several options in terms of determining what forms you may need to file and who you may need to file them to, whether it be the IRS or the recipient, depending on your status. The 1095A is information return filed by the exchange. You won't see much of this unless you are the exchange. We are not supporting this form, but the form is provided by the government to the individual being insured. So you won't see that form. That is not a very common one. But the 1095B, the information return filed by insurers and self-insuring employers with less than 50 full-time employees. This is for anyone that is self-insured. This document allows the individual or the employee to prove that they were covered by minimum essential coverage, as well as give the IRS a mechanism to validate that. The form is sent to the IRS as well as the individual being insured. There are transmittals. The 1094B is the transmittal for the 1095B. You will get 3 free with each order. That is common for us to send those for you, and you would get those with any of these other 1095s as well. So the 1095C is probably the most common of all. It is the information return filed by the applicable large employer or employers with 50 or more full-time employees. This document allows the individual or employee to prove they were covered by minimum essential coverage and gives the IRS the mechanism to validate that as well. This form, like I said, is sent to the IRS as well as the employee. And the transmittal for this form would be the 1094C. There are 3 pages to that particular form, and they would get 3 free of each page. So we are supporting those as well. This is kind of just a helpful tree to kind of show you the insurers and self-insuring employers. They are going to file the 1095B to the individual employee as well as the IRS. Employers with 50 or more full-time employees are going to file it to the individual as well as the IRS. And then the exchanges, they are simply filing the 1095A. The 1095B, some key points about that is to allow the taxpayer or employee to establish and for the IRS to verify. We'll keep talking about that. We need to establish and verify that these minimum essential coverage is being offered. The type of customer that will use this form is the employer with less than 50 full-time employees and self-insured. So self-insured, again, is provider. That means the employer is the provider of the insurance. Not very common, but you may see some of those forms. Here's the official IRS form for the 1095B. I'm going to say this is the page 1, and this is page 2. I think it actually says page 3 up in the corner here, primarily because page 2 is technically the instructions. However, on the back of our page 1, you will see the instructions. So we, instead of offering 3 pieces of paper here, we've just minimized that to 2. So you'll find this the page 1, and this is the page 2. The only reason this continuation page would be needed is if the employee has more than 6 family members. So most often I will find that the employer will need to complete the first page. There may be a small percentage of people who are needing the second page. So sometimes you'll order maybe 100, example, 100 of these page 1 and 25 of the page 2 just to accommodate that. We'll move on. Here's the 1094B transmittal. You'll see here, this is the transmittal of the health coverage and information return. What forms would the customer order? The customer is self-insured, has 40 full-time employees. 5 employees have more than 6 people covered by the insurance plan. This example here, the customer would need to order the 1095B as well as the 1095B continuation page and the 1094C. The other example here is the customer is self-insured, has 30 full-time employees, none of which have more than 6 covered by the insurance plan. They are going to only need the 1095B and the 1094B. The 1095C key points, again, is to help the employees determine whether they can claim a premium tax credit and to assist the IRS in determining whether the employer owes a penalty. Keep in mind the employer's responsibility to offer the minimum essential coverage is separate from filing these forms. These forms do need to be filed. That is a separate piece of the equation. So keep in mind there could be penalties for 1, not offering minimum essential coverage, but 2, not filing the forms. There is going to be some leniency this first year in terms of if you made a good faith effort to file these forms, then they will not fine you. You will not see penalties. They're going to give some leniency this year. So keep that in mind as well. This 1095C is the employer-provided health insurance offer and coverage. This is going to go over the offer and the coverage. It's going to go over the covered individuals. As I said, there is a second page or continuation page if there are more than 6 family members covered. So you'll see here is the second page. So you would need to order this first page and possibly the second page. Here's the transmittal, the 1094C. Again, this has 3 pages. So you're going to see this page 1, page 2, and page 3. The page 3 is most often not used. It's for other ALE members or aggregated ALE groups, but they will get 3 free transmittals of each page per order. So you'll have all of these if needed. For which employees do I need to file and provide the 1095C? The 1095C must be provided to all full-time employees who work an average of at least 30 hours per week. I won't go over the example. We kind of went over some of these examples a couple slides back. But if the employer is self-insured, has 50 or more full-time employees, the employer must issue the 1095C to any employee enrolled in the self-insured coverage. Full-time employees are counted when determining ALE status, not for issuing the 1095Cs unless the full-time employee received coverage from a self-insured employer. What forms should the customer order? Here's another example, or a couple other examples. The customer has 150 full-time employees, none of which have more than 6 people covered by the insurance plan, and is not self-insured nor a commonly owned company. Therefore, the customer is going to need to order the 1095C and the 1094C page 1. We do sell the pages separately. However, I do recommend just getting the 3-page kit. It is easier to order, and then you're taking the guesswork out of it. It's just 3 sheets for this set. So I would recommend ordering that just to be safe. I'm an employer. What 1095 am I required to file? Here's a great sheet. I personally have printed this off and just kind of have it posted just as a reminder. If you're self-insured, have 50 full-time employees, then you are required to file the Form 1095C. If you're self-insured, you do not have 50 full-time employees, you would file the 1095B. If you are not self-insured and have 50 full-time employees, 1095C. The only time you are not required to file would be if you are not self-insured and you do not have 50 or more full-time employees. Some of the discussion points with the customers, kind of a line of questioning you might ask if you're talking to someone or trying to determine yourself what you might need. Your first question, do you have 50 full-time employees? If yes, then the customer will purchase the 1095C. Are you self-insured? If yes, they would purchase the 1095B. If no, the customer does not have a 1095 reporting requirement. Reporting obligations are to the IRS, to the employee, and then to keep a record for yourself. You can keep that record electronically, or you can purchase double the number of forms and keep half of them for yourself to file. What forms will your software provider support? That we're not certain of, depending on your software, what they're supporting, but the IRS official document must be provided to the IRS, and that is that landscape piece that we were just looking at. As you probably noticed, that does not have an envelope that it would fit easily in. It is expected that will probably be inserted with the W-2s. We will have some other options in terms of the recipient filing because that is not mandated by the IRS in terms of the format like that landscape version is. That has to be landscape when sent to the IRS so that it is scannable. Let's see, we do have some custom pre-printed documents. What forms would the customer order? Here's another example. They have 40 full-time employees. Have to ask additional questions before determining what they might need. If they're commonly owned, if yes, then they need to indicate how many full-time employees exist between companies, as it may give them 50 or more full-time employees. If no, then they need to indicate if they are self-insured. If we find out they are self-insured, then they'd need the 1095B and the 1094Bs. If no, then they don't have any reporting requirements. For the ACA correction forms, there are no specific ACA correction forms. Depending on when the error is found and on what document the error occurred, a corrected checkbox can be marked or left blank. Since there are no specific correction forms, the customer or employer would order additional 1095 or 1094 forms depending on which the error occurred. And in some cases, a corrected form will be sent to the recipient and employee as well as the IRS. In other cases, a corrected form will be sent only to the IRS. So the full line of product offerings, in addition to the official IRS landscape formats that we showed you, we will be offering additional formats for the 1095B and 1095C. Being these are additional formats, you will find they're going to be a portrait style, and they will have their own envelopes. So you'll find we have the recipient copies of designs with the compatible envelopes to offer. We will provide you the programming grids to program to those forms. The pressure seal recipient copy, we have those as well. That would alleviate the need for an envelope. You could use the pressure seal version. We have blank as well as pre-printed. And then we also have perforated paper with instructions. So if you wish to program the full page format or the half page format and do all of the printing at once, the data as well as the form, then you can just purchase the perforated paper with instructions. Here's our half page design. This is a custom form developed. There's half page. So the top of the page is like the landscape format, the government format, because this is the employee or recipient copy. You cannot send this to the IRS. They will not be able to scan it, but you can send this to the recipient, as they will not be sending these into the IRS. They will just be using this data to file their taxes. So this is the half page design. You can see it only allows for up to 6 family members. We did create a full page design, and the reason we did this is because if someone has more than 6 family members, then they can use this full page design. On the back of the full page design is the instructions. This alleviates the need for having to complete 2 of these half page designs. If you've programmed to the half page design and someone has, say, 7 insured members, you would print 1 with the 6 members and then print a separate one with just that additional 1 member. This here alleviates the need for the possible use of a continuation page. This also fits the same envelope. You can see the applicable large employer address and the employee address are in the same position. So the same envelope would work with either one of these. We do have the gum seal as well as the self-seal. Remember, this is not the form you would send to the IRS. Oftentimes I find that many people are filing electronically with the IRS. We'll move on further and talk a little bit about that, but if you have more than 250 employees, you are required to file electronically with the IRS, in which case this form here is very helpful because you can send this to the recipient with its own separate envelope, and you don't have to include them with the W-2s and collate them with the W-2s like you would the landscape version. Here's the blank paper. This blank paper can be used for the 1095B or the 1095C. You can program either the half page or the full page format onto this. A separate blank form will be offered that will have a fold perforation and instructions on the back as well. So this is just the B95 blank. It is simply the blank paper. The half-page form would fit on here nicely if you programmed. It has the instructions on the bottom and the form on the top. That's an option. This is the envelope that works with both. This envelope does not fit with the landscape government version. The landscape government version would need to be included with the W-2s or in self-addressed envelopes. As I mentioned, collating those 1095s with the W-2s for each employee would be a very difficult task and a very manual task. So we aren't recommending that, which is why we're offering these recipient copies. Like I said, it is moisture seal as well as self-seal, and the item numbers are listed here. Then here's the pressure seal form. We have 3 offerings. We have the blank, the 81650. We have the 1095B, and we have a 1095C. And those are the pressure seal offerings that we have as well. What form would the customer order? Here's another customer needs 1095C and the 1094C. We'll need to ask what their software is supporting. Only the IRS official landscape form, in both the IRS official landscape form and the broker form custom form. Here are the other options, and here's some due dates. To the recipient, it must be filed by February 1st. To the IRS, February 29th. And then e-filing is March 31st. Let's see, the filer or employer can apply for an automatic 30-day extension with the IRS. In addition, an extension of time to furnish the recipient statements is available by writing a letter to the IRS. As I mentioned, the e-file threshold is $250, and no signature is required when filing electronically. You will also file the transmittals electronically if you choose that method. Oops, sorry. Let me go back here. Here's the contact information, the telephone number, and the email address for information or to contact Erin. And please feel free to, chat any questions. You can email any questions that you needed to the email address. We're happy to help answer those. There are some unique situations we've run into, so just let us know what questions we have. We do offer free samples. So if you need samples of the forms for testing or programming grids, please just let us know and send to these email addresses. Now, Orlando, was there anything else you wanted to cover?
No, that's perfect right there. Just waiting if anybody had any questions. So if anybody in the audience has any questions right now, that'd be a great time to submit them. You can use your question and chat boxes on your GoToMeeting or webinar session there. And of course, feel free to give us a call at 800-858-5544 or email us at info@informeddecisions.com or even Erin at informeddecisions.com. Looks like we have no questions. That was pretty good. Teresa, thank you for your time. And of course, for our audience, thank you for your time. We know your time is valuable, and we thank you for attending this webinar. Again, this is Informed Decisions, and let us know if you have any questions or anything we can help you with on these ACA reporting forms and anything else that you need. All right. Thank you, everyone, for attending.
Thank you.